very good evening and welcome to the news at 6 here on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Tracy Shilshi, and in the next 30 minutes I'll be getting you through the day's top stories. One of them, of course, coming in from the markets. It's been a manic Monday. We'll get you details of that in a bit. But first, the headlines. It's one of the worst falls ever for the Indian markets. Benchmark Sensex crashes over 600 points, 1,600 points. Nearly 7 lakh crore investor wealth is wiped off. The rupee too falls to its lowest level of 66.72 to a dollar. Finance Minister and RBI Governor react to the global sell-off triggered by fall in Chinese stocks, say the Indian economy is strong enough to withstand this shock. The centre tells Supreme Court that political parties cannot be brought under the RTI, argues they are not public authorities set up under the Parliament's laws. Italy challenges India's jurisdiction in the Marines case. United Nations Tribunal asks both nations to suspend court proceedings. And Sangakkara swan song goes off tune. India beat Sri Lanka in the second test in Colombo by 278 runs. Level 3 test series by 1-1. Top story this evening, the Indian markets crashed on Monday, recording its biggest fall since 2009. Sensex shed over 1,600 points, the Nifty over 500, and nearly 7 lakh crore rupees got wiped out from investors in a single-day carnage, all because of the sell-off triggered by a global meltdown. Here are more details.
The widespread unrest in markets was set in motion nearly 2 weeks ago when China sharply devalued its currency yuan. But the extent of the Monday mayhem was beyond what was expected. The markets crashed by a whopping 6.22% because of global meltdown in one of the biggest sell-offs in recent years. Sensex nosedived by over 1,740 points during the day and finally closed at 1,625 points down at 26,742. This is the biggest fall that Sensex has seen in 6 years, and it is the third biggest fall ever. The Nifty too fell by over 500 points during the day, but finally closed at 7,809. The trigger for Monday's carnage was the rout in China's equities. Shanghai shares closed 8.75% lower, marking their biggest single-day percentage loss since 2007.
The data which has been coming from Chinese economy for many weeks is quite poor, rather poor. So that had to have its reflection on the global markets, global economies. So the entire world markets are impacted. So is Indian markets.
To soothe the investors, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley and RBI Chief Raghuram Rajan remained optimistic and allayed fears that there could be more in store.
There is not a single domestic factor in India which has either contributed to it or has added to it. Now, these are external factors. I have not the least doubt that this turbulence is transient and temporary in nature. The markets will settle down.
In India, we have to absorb this volatility, being fairly assured that as far as fundamentals go, the fundamentals of the economy are good. And they will reassert themselves. Eventually, after, a certain amount of turmoil, markets reassess fundamentals. And when they do that reassessment, they will see that India is a good place to be. So I feel fairly confident that the turmoil will settle down, and at that point we will be a good investment destination again.
It was the third straight day of big sell-off in Indian stock markets. Stocks across all sectors, including energy, banking, auto, IT, infrastructure and real estate, saw massive selling. All 50 constituents of Nifty were also down. Tata Motors and ONGC were the worst hit, losing over 6% in early trade. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
The rupee too has slumped to its lowest level since September 2013, and the RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan gave an assurance that the central bank would not hesitate to use forex reserves in order to reduce the currency's volatility. The currency, though, weakened 1.3% against the US dollar today following a global sell-off. But the government and the RBI assure that the Indian situation is much better to other countries.
We will have no hesitation in using our reserves when appropriate to reduce volatility in the rupee.
Assurances from the RBI governor amid fears created by a downward spiraling currency. Rajan has said India has enough foreign exchange reserves to cushion the slump in the rupee.
Let me emphasize that we have $355 billion plus another $25 billion in forward purchases that are not required until next year to meet foreign currency FCNR liabilities. So we have approximately $380 billion in reserves to be used as and when the need arises. We will have no hesitation in using our reserves when appropriate to reduce volatility in the rupee.
The rupee slinked to a low of 66.72 against the US dollar during the day before settling at 66.50, its lowest level in 2 years. In the last 4 weeks, the rupee has fallen nearly 4%. But the Reserve Bank of India and the government say the country is in a better position relative to other countries. Even though RBI does not target a specific level for the rupee, it intervenes in forex markets via state-run banks to curb volatility.
Whether it is currency prices or whether it is asset prices, all of these are going to settle down as they adjust to the changes in valuations across the markets. This is part and parcel of the capital markets. We haven't seen anything that would suggest any major breaks or any major dislocations. It is an adjustment process. Obviously, as I said, our goal is to monitor the situation very carefully.
There has been huge selling pressure on the Indian currency since August 11th, when China devalued the yuan. There are also fears that China could be forced to devalue the yuan further should its economy falter. This has led to concerns about a currency war that could prove disastrous for global equity markets. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
All right, for more on this story, we're joined by Priyaranjan Dash, who's a senior journalist, joining us in the studio this evening, as always, trying to help us understand the situation, especially when it comes to money, a little better. Mr. Dash, firstly, just talking about the markets, is this a knee-jerk reaction to that global sell-off, or do we see this trend, the volatility, continuing for the next few days too?
Well, I don't agree with what the finance minister is saying is a temporary and transitory phenomenon. It's not, because clearly, as Mr. Jaitley says, this is primarily an external shock to our markets. And it's not that domestic factors are responsible for it, but the global meltdown, what we have seen and its impact on India is not really temporary, because it seems that this global meltdown and this instability in financial markets worldwide could continue for a while, at least, because there are no mitigating factors one could see. It seems that since August 10th or 11th, with the devaluation of yuan, a certain amount of instability has been injected into the world economy. And it is a situation where countries could be or are going in for competitive devaluation, particularly economies that are driven by external factors, that is external demand. They are dependent on export growth. And worldwide, the economies are fragile. And so this kind of a competitive devaluation, so the currency instability is going to continue for a while. It's been triggered off, and we do not know whether they are going to pull off from this, or they would actually go into a full-fledged currency war, leading to a contagion effect that we are seeing in the stock markets and other financial markets, which will, of course, affect domestic markets in India, as they have done today. The extent of impact that we have seen today may be huge, and that kind of things are once in a while far between. Like this one is, for instance, the worst ever fall since 2008.
Yes.
The big global crisis that took place, the financial market crisis. But to say that we could be in a relatively better position compared to other emerging markets, insofar as our currency value is concerned, and even our markets are concerned. So we may not be impacted as much as other emerging markets would be. But to say that, and our macroeconomic indicators are, they look stable, but the economy is not quite in pink of health. So the external shock that we are experiencing, initially affecting the financial markets, we should see that this impact that the external factors are causing on the Mint Street or on Dalal Street do not actually spill over to the Main Street. That's going to be the challenge for days to come.
Yes.
Because these kind of global situation, instability in global market could continue for a while.
All
they
right.
are not going to go away in a
And talking of that
hurry.
instability, of course, the rupee and the markets, of course, two sides of a coin. So we're seeing the rupee too sliding further. I mean, people have been saying that it could perhaps reach 68. You never know, or 70 as well. But, you know, talking about the slide that we are seeing, and by the indications and the way you're pointing it out, it does seem that we could be seeing a further slide. How should people be prepared for this, especially those who are probably traveling abroad, especially children, students who are hoping to study abroad? This is going to affect their, their budgeting definitely.
Well, of course, for people who would be spending in dollars, this is not good, clearly not for the students for medical treatment or travel abroad. But if you look at it, there are two things. Basically, one is if you look at the real effective rate of rupee was a little overvalued. So this is a correction that is not all that bad, number one.
Okay.
So in terms of maintaining export competitiveness, this would clearly help. But considering that in our export markets, demand is very low, this is not such a great benefit, especially when competing exporters such as China and other emerging, in the same kind of products, we do not get that price edge even with a substantial devaluation or the value of rupee falling.
All right.
But since we import more than we export,
it's likely to hit us lesser than perhaps other currencies are hitting their own countries there. We'll leave it there for the moment. Mr. Dash, thanks so much for joining us with those details there. We'll keep an eye out, of course, for the rest of the week on how the markets pan, and hopefully be joined by Mr. Dash again to give us an idea of what really is panning out as far as the markets and the rupee is concerned. But moving on to more news, in the centre has told the Supreme Court that political parties cannot be brought under the Right to Information Act. On a petition, the government claimed that it would adversely affect their internal working. The government said that the proposal also carries the risk of rivals misusing it to settle political scores. The court had sought a response from the centre on a PIL filed by an NGO Association for Democratic Reforms. Advocate Prashant Bhushan, who appeared for that petitioner, claimed that the national parties are virtually funded by the state as they are exempted from filing income tax returns.
The Central Information Commission had a detailed hearing in which they heard all these parties, and after that came to the conclusion that political parties are public authorities under the RTI Act because they receive enormous financial benefits from the government. Therefore, people of this country are entitled to know as to what they are doing, whether they are adhering by their constitution. But unfortunately, the central government feels they are, just as they are destroying all institutions of accountability, whether it is Lokpal, CVC, CBI, etc., they want to destroy the RTI Act also.
A United Nations tribunal today asked both India and Italy to suspend court proceedings in the 2012 Italian Marines case. It also sought initial reports from both nations by the 24th of September. Italy had taken the matter to the tribunal, challenging India's jurisdiction. The two Marines, Massimiliano Malatorre and Salvatore Gironi, are on trial in India for killing two fishermen off the Kerala coast in 2012. Italy claims UN laws grant jurisdiction to the country that owns the ship involved at incidents at sea. However, the UN tribunal did not respond to Italy's request that its Marines should be freed from all restrictions. National news now, and at least 6 people died and 20 were injured in a train accident in Anantapur district of Andhra Pradesh. The dead included a Congress MLA from Karnataka. 4 bogies of the Bangalore-Nanded Express were derailed after a speeding granite-laden truck rammed into its AC coaches. The brakes of the lorry reportedly failed, which crashed through a barrier to collide with the train. 4-time Lok Sabha MP, Congress MLA Venkatesh Nayak from Raichur district of Karnataka was among those killed. The Railways has ordered an inquiry into the incident. And now let's quickly take you through other updates from across the country and nationwide. Israeli Navy Chief Vice Admiral Ram Rutberg was accorded Guard of Honor in his arrival to New Delhi. Rutberg later met his Indian counterpart Admiral R.K. Dhawan and other top Indian defence officials on deepening bilateral ties. His visit comes in the backdrop of the long-range surface-to-air missile Barak 8 that's undergoing trials in Israel. Pakistan resorted to firing automatic weapons and shelling in the forward posts and civilian areas in Balakot area. The fresh ceasefire violation takes place after a few days of lull along the line of control in Poonch district. There have been 52 violations of the 2003 border ceasefire agreement by Pakistan in August and over 245 ceasefire violations this year so far. An Indian Air Force MiG-21 fighter jet crashed in Budgam district of Jammu and Kashmir. The pilot managed to eject safely though. The aircraft took off from Srinagar airfield and was on a routine trainee sortie. A court of inquiry has been ordered to ascertain the cause of the crash. The Special Court for Prevention of Corruption on Monday dismissed bail applications of former Goa PWD Minister Churchill Alimau in the multi-crore Louis Berger bribery case for the second time. Our former Chief Minister Alimau was arrested on the 5th of August. We had a quick break here, but still ahead cricket, and it wasn't a sweet swan song, but legends bid emotional farewell to Kumar Sangakkara on his last test. Details ahead. Welcome back. Cricket action now, and Ravichandran Ashwin took 5 wickets to help India notch up a series-levelling 278-run win in the second test against Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's day got off to the worst possible start as they lost a wicket off the first ball of the morning. Ashwin grabbed 5 for 42 as Lanka were bowled out for 134 in their second innings soon after lunch on the 5th day. The hosts lost their last 8 batsmen for 62 runs. Leg spinner Amit Mishra chipped in with 3 wickets, while fast bowler Ishant Sharma and Umesh Yadav finished with a wicket each. Virat Kohli's first test victory as captain in 5 matches came in the last international match played by retiring Sri Lankan player Kumar Sangakkara.
Real team effort from everybody.
Well, Sangakkara, considered to be one of the greatest batsmen the world has produced, and he bid farewell to his 15-year-old test career in Colombo today. Though it wasn't the perfect swan song for the southpaw, the Sarah Oval turned emotional as he left the field one last time. Here's a look at his glorious career.
A very noisy Colombo crowd greeted when Sangakkara went into bat in his last innings through a guard of honour.
Spinning sharply, caught it gully, and Sangakkara is gone for 18.
Though his last innings produced only 18 runs, Sangakkara has etched his name among the greatest with the sheer amount of runs he has scored.
From the close family members, Kumar Sangakkara.
In the list of highest run getters in the tests, he stands 5th with a haul of 12,400 runs in 134 tests. His tally of 38 test hundreds has also put him among the greats. In ODIs too, Sangakkara's run haul stood at 14,234 in 404 matches at an average of 41.98, including 25 hundreds.
It's always going to be special because this is the first time that, I had my wife, my children, my parents and my siblings all together in one place watching me play. That is always going to be the most memorable part of my game.
Former greats of Sri Lankan cricket turned up to bid him farewell on Monday. The Indian team presented him a jersey with signatures of the players. Earlier, Virat Kohli sent him a farewell note with a photograph of the two shaking hands. But the biggest offer came from the Sri Lankan president himself. Thousands of fans applauded as Maithripala Sirisena offered him the post of High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. During his farewell speech, Sangakkara thanked his team and the visiting Indians for giving him an emotional farewell. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by Jaideep Ghosh, senior sports journalist, talking to us about Sangakkara's swan song and the legacy that he leaves behind. Jaideep, definitely not the way he would have wanted to go, not a big bang, but definitely the career is the big bang that he could have had.
Yeah, because see, sports is not an ideal science. You cannot script farewells perfectly. But I guess, yeah, I mean, you win some, you lose some. Essentially, as a cricketer, as a sports person, you need to leave a mark, which he has done in no uncertain manner. 25 ODI hundreds, 38 test centuries. So much he has done as a wicketkeeper, as a cricketer overall for Sri Lankan cricket, for world cricket. He will always be considered as one of the people, the big guns of international cricket who have left the sport recently. And it's going to be a little bit of a gap for Sri Lankan cricket to fill up, which will be quite a considerable one. But that's how it is. I mean, there are big innings and all innings come to an end. So this one also came to an end.
And just talking about the personality that he was liked by all teams across the world as well.
Yeah, well, Sangakkara could be a pretty handful while he was playing. I mean, he was not the nice, docile, gentle person that he's made out to be right now. Behind the stumps, he has been a bugbear for many cricketers, international Australians and all who are the champions in this job of sledging have always acknowledged that this guy was no mean character to deal with. But yeah, I mean, that being said, his achievements are essentially what he did with the bat and the gloves, the batting gloves or the wicket-keeping gloves. And he, with Mahela Jayawardene and several other cricketers, have made Sri Lanka the world power that they are. And he will be considered as one of the biggest cricketers to come out of the subcontinent. Definitely one of the best ones to come out of world cricket. So yeah, it was a big loss, and I think he'll be widely regarded throughout.
Absolutely. And this is not the last, though, that we'll be seeing him play. He will, of course, be playing in the IPL, wouldn't he?
I don't know about that because I don't think the IPL or anything else will now be a matter of consequence for him. And essentially, I think the contracts and all will become... See, you need to understand that IPL contracts are mostly for players who are actually still playing. You know, I mean, the visibility is a big thing, especially for the guys who are, bidding for those players. He might not, we don't know. I mean, depends on, I mean, there are so many other roles that the IPL offers, coaches, mentors, commentator, I mean, you could be anything.
Yes, yeah.
And he's a very, very vocal person, very, very focused. His language is perfect. He might be on the other side of the camera for all you know.
Absolutely. And you were just mentioning just a short while, Jaideep, about how he's leaving this deep void in Sri Lanka cricket.
Right.
The current situation as it stands. Can you give us an idea really where he came up from and what he's leaving behind, talking about that void in Sri Lanka cricket?
See, you need to understand that over the last few years, Arjuna Ranatunga was the man who created Sri Lankan cricket as such, after which they went on to win the 96 World Cup at a time when nobody really gave them too much of a chance as a cricketing team, because prior to that, the Sri Lankan team would visit, would travel, would go, play matches, lose and go. And it was a given that you're going to beat Sri Lanka. Once Ranatunga put in that culture of, don't give up without fight, then you had several other players coming in, Aravinda De Silva, Sanath Jayasuriya, Ramesh Kaluvitharna. These players who made 96 World Cup their own. Subsequently, you had these players who had come in, who had already been given this culture that you cannot just go and play and come back. You have to be fighters. So this is where Sangakkara was one of the youngsters who had gone in with this little psyche and this psychology behind them, which made them a competitive team throughout, and at home they were unbeatable practically. But only recently you have seen in the last maybe couple of test matches that Sangha has begun to look a little fallible, because maybe he's thinking beyond cricket, maybe he's already started thinking of life outside of cricket. So it's a great time for him to go, but whatever he has left, that gap that he has left, the experience that Sri Lankan cricket is going to miss out on,
Yes.
that is something that will be a considerable blow.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jaideep, thanks so much for joining us with those details. Thank you. On to more news. An External Affairs Minister, Sushma Swaraj, is in Cairo on her first leg of a two-nation tour. She addressed the Indian diaspora in the city and is expected to call on President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Also on the agenda are bilateral talks with her counterpart, Sameh Hassan Shokri. She will also be meeting Nabil El Rabi, Secretary General of the League of Arab States. Swaraj will visit Germany from the 25th of August and hold meetings with the German Foreign Minister and a number of other leaders.
This region in the Gulf and in the West Asia and North Africa is growing in significance from the perspective of our national interests. Not only is this area home to 7 million Indians, but is also crucial for our energy security.
In more international news, the Islamic State has destroyed the 2,000-year-old temple in the historic ruins of Palmyra city in Syria. The terrorists reportedly detonated large quantities of explosives in the temple of Balshamin. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights confirmed the destruction of the temple that was built in 17 AD and said it was destroyed a month ago. The terror group took control of Palmyra in May this year, sparking fears for the site that is considered one of the ancient world's most important cultural centers. The latest developments comes just days after the group beheaded the 82-year-old retired chief archaeologist of Palmyra. With that, let's quickly take you through some international news updates in Global Buzz. Macedonia reopened its border with Greece overnight after a standoff lasting several days. Riot police remained but did little to slow the passage of hundreds of migrants fleeing the Syrian civil war and other conflicts in the Middle East. Many migrants were stuck at the border for days after Macedonia declared emergency and sealed the crossing. Japan has demanded that the US take preventive measures to ensure the safety of their military facilities after an explosion rocked a warehouse at a US military base in Sagahamira earlier today. There were no reports of injury and no harmful chemicals were released in the explosion. The Lebanese army was deployed in Beirut last night to quell protests that turned violent. Demonstrations against the government turned violent for a second day, and Prime Minister Tamam Salam threatened to resign as the public discontent brought thousands to the streets. French President François Hollande awarded the Legion of Honor to 3 US citizens and a Briton who disarmed a machine gun-toting attacker on a train on Friday evening. The men tied up Ayoub El-Khazani, who threatened passengers on the high-speed train bound for Paris. Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel also attended the ceremony. And that's all we have for you on the news at 6. But coming up next is The Big Picture.